Alright, so one thing you need to know about me. I live very far from home. I had to move because of work, and during the fall I miss home especially much. And when I miss home, I watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer religiously. So for this month's Halloween special, I'll be doing a vampire month. And we're of course gonna start with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the game for the original Xbox.
You are watching Growing Up Gaming. Vampire Month.
Coming to you through the magic of Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, because I have no idea where the cables for this thing is, let alone the controllers. So Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the game.
Whoa, stop the video. I just finished writing the script and the amount of enemies you have to kill in this game is ridiculous. So I'm gonna put a kill counter up there somewhere. It will be over there. And we are gonna count all the monsters that die in this. Alright? Sorry Charles, one more time.
All games have odd audio. Your ears have to get used to the low quality of the voice acting. Like all games from this point in time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the game, starts off with the tutorial that walks you through. Whoa! I'll never get used to how fluid and fast these controls are. Jesus Christ!
Beep beep.
When you come straight off a modern title, this feels more like playing a Roadrunner game than a Buffy game. So the game plays as you would expect. You hack and slash, and there's not really much to it except that... so satisfying. Except that you can stake your opponents and use the environment and your enemy's different weaknesses to quickly kill them off. Unfortunately, this also means that I have to manually aim to shoot a vampire in the heart. And you know what? I've made fun of the characters on the show for being bad at this, and here I am failing myself. 13-year-old me would be so disappointed, but then again, he was just as bad. And the fact that this game is darker than my sense of humor is not exactly helping out either. Did that vampire just scream after she died? Yep, she totally did. Well, that's new in vampire lore. So at the end of the tutorial level, we are introduced to the plot, which is fairly standard for a Buffy game. The Master is back as Season 1 and Season 2 baddie, and we need to stop him. But wait, there's first this badly animated cheerleading practice and some vampire slaying. I know they put you in the school level because it's an iconic location from the TV show, but did they have to fill it with people? I mean, seriously, who hangs out at their school at night in their party wear? I know smartphones didn't exist back then, but it feels like half the school and their parents apparently? That guy had a bald spot. I mean, that guy is either a pedophile who got what he deserved or some sort of concerned parent. Or he's a recycled model the developer put there and thought no one would notice. But I liked the idea of him being a pedophile, because I bet this wasn't the kind of sucking he was hoping for when he came to the school tonight. Sorry.
Who do we have here? New blood or...
Ah, what's with your face, dude? Someone made this and thought, yep, that looks terrifying. Wait, what? Seriously? I mean, I remember why I always had claw hands as a kid. These games are ridiculous at times. After you get hit, there's no invincibility period, and while the enemies have a block button, you as the player do not. But you know, it's kinda worth it, because when you finally kill a tough enemy, it's worth it.
If anyone has a free hand, I'm about to be eaten.
Hey! What do you think this is? A library?
Just a stray I was
Oh
looking
hey,
for.
Silly Face is back. And we get to find out that Silly Face, together with another expendable character and Spike, are trying to perform some sort of ritual, as Silly Face nicks the Book of Spirit Restoration. You would almost think this has something to do with the Master, who is currently a spirit. Also, Spike sort of accidentally puts a demon inside Drusilla, his girlfriend, but then doesn't like it, and he helps the Scooby Gang at some point because they will help him, but then we never see him again, and we only see possessed Drusilla floating through a room like twice in this. Nothing after Spike helps us, and we never see him again. Slow Knight of the Bronze? Sorry, you have to speak up. I can't hear you over the late 90s metal. Oh god, vampires. Wouldn't be a trip to the bronze without them. Okay, so after I battled a vampire for 20 minutes because I forgot you can't kill this type of vamp yet, and some other vampires, I ran into good old Spike and his cronies. So after some foreplay and a little dialogue, we learn absolutely nothing new, because the cinematic cuts out in the middle of this. Oh shit, that was me. I pressed the A button, whoops. After wandering around aimlessly for a while, fighting a few vampires, falling through a floor, and encountering some more vampires, I died to a supernatural Molotov cocktail. And because of this game's rigid save point system, we get to hear Spike's dialogue again, and I promise not to hit the A button while it's playing.
That's alright, boys. A little game we indulge in, the Slayer and me. A bit of foreplay before the grand seduction. Courtship rituals. You get the picture?
Yeah. One thing I can say about my relationship with the little miss down there, it's got fire.
Okay, so all he had to say was some stupid sexual innuendo? Really? Okay, so I kill the vamps again, fall through the floor again, talk to the closet lady who went to the bronze in her pajama pants, and I encounter some other vamps and kill them. Then I kill a lot more vamps. Run into Willow being kidnapped a few times at the end of the level, and it epically concludes by transitioning into a new level where we are introduced to a completely unrelated villain that hasn't been seen before at this point in the game, in a game that has already introduced 9 bad guys and still feels the need to introduce a 10th. I guess the game does this to explain the zombies, and that would be fine if the zombies hadn't already been introduced in the first level. Huh? Okay guys, I keep notes when I play games for videos, and I have nothing written down for this level. So let's just count the kill and fast forward to the story a bit.
This time, Buffy is dead, guys. Numbskull, just hold that pose, sweetheart. Hold that pose.
So I finally catch up to Willow, and the new boss guy initiates a battle with me. Maybe I'll finally get to confront... Nope, he's just gonna throw more monsters at me. So I finally catch up to Willow, and the snake lady initiates a battle with me. Maybe I'll... Nope, she just opens the door and runs away. So they drag Willow all the way across town to this grave and then just leaves her. Why did they even bother kidnapping her in the first place? Couldn't they just have gone to the graveyard in peace and resurrected the thing they were resurrecting in peace and not involved the Slayer, and wouldn't that have been better for them? Anyways, I need to go back to the library and do some bantering with the Scooby Gang, which is nice. I like those guys, and they got some of the original voice actors, and then it's back to the graveyard. And so after 2 hours I catch up to the bad guys and disrupt the little resurrection and take out the Soul Reaver reject guy with his resurrected cronies. And of course with his last power, Soul Reaver reject guy does something with the talisman and hey, the master is back, kind of?
I killed him, Giles. I killed him and then crushed his bones so that he couldn't ever come back. This is so not happening.
I fear that it is. You see, your crushing the Master's skeleton precluded any further attempt to reanimate him as a being of flesh and bone. But it is possible that a skilled necromancer could resurrect him in a disembodied state, as a kind of phantom.
So Willow's gonna work with the talisman and we head up to Angel's mansion, because things always works out when Buffy goes to see Angel, and he never turns evil or gets... Yep, he turned evil.
But I will be, Slayer. I will be.
Let go of me!
You wound me, Slayer. Surely one last kiss isn't too much to ask.
Not it. You can take me. Come on. Let me tell you that.
So alright, time to do some magical mumbo jumbo so we can resurrect Angel or turn him good or something. And of course we have to do this at this dark area because we couldn't do it anywhere else. There's some like market thingy. Oh! Just got killed by a crate. And the crates aren't the only thing getting harder. By this point in the game the difficulty ramps up ridiculously from one level to another. In Angel's Mansion there were harder enemies, but there were also more environment hazards that you could use to kill the hard ones, and not every... Seriously, game? So I'm beginning to realize why I never bothered to revisit this game. It's great, and the combat has a unique twist to it that feels faithful to the show, and makes the game feel fresh and stand out from the other beat-em-ups of the era. Characters have HP, but once it's drained you don't die. You have to perform a finishing move on your opponent, and your opponent has to do the same to you. But in the last third of the game decides to ignore that rule whenever it feels like it. Like this vampire killing me even though I have health left on my bar. And this vampire doesn't go down when his HP is deleted. And this boss can't be staked just because. And this random vampire doesn't die when exposed to sunlight just because. That's the core problem here. The last third of the game is completely inconsistent, and the rules the game spent hours setting up are completely thrown out the window, and all that's left is the unfairness of the combat with zero invincibility after you hit. Enemies can just curb stomp you to death if they feel like it. And that was fine when it also meant that I could decapitate an enemy in a second and win a fight, if I managed to get in the right hit. But I can't anymore because they're all immune to finishing moves, and they now have psychic power for some reason. And that's just really the beginning. Another cool thing the game brought over from the TV show is the use of the environment hazards to kill your enemies. On the show this happened all the time, and in the first few levels you have the ability to use that very frequently, and it makes you feel like a badass. But screw it if you like that aspect, because when you get to the docks, there's none of that left. It's all punchy until someone goes down. Another thing in the show was that the main characters would often pick their battles and sometimes flee. The game also has this, but when you get to the docks, that's gone. Every area now has a sodding magical barrier without any reason for it to be there, or the doors will be locked for some magical reason. And in the show, every monster had a weakness, and in the game, every monster has a weakness. You can always stake a vampire if they have the right opening, and you can kick off a zombie's head to immobilize it. But then the game decides to go, yep, you guessed it, by the time you get to the docks, screw that, that was too fun, can't do that anymore. Now you have to pummel your enemies until they have no HP left, and then you can stake them. All in all, every point I've given to this game for staying faithful to the story's source material gets thrown out in this one level, and they never bother to throw the fun aspects back in. But you know what? Despite all the bullshit and the rigorous checkpoints that set you back like 30 minutes of progress, I still enjoy it for some sadistic reason. So after killing literally hundreds of vampires and this boss that gets recycled 3 times, why did we have to come to the docks? The sound cut out, really? Screw this, I'm fucking cheating! Oh yeah, we came to find some black market thing Spike needed, and the black market thing was this creepy demon that they need for the ritual. But of course, after killing him, we find out that they didn't really need him after all. Oh yeah, and the school gets attacked the second time I would kill this werewolf vampire. Yes, werewolf vampire. because vampires and werewolves are not two totally different creatures that the show spent 7 years clearly defining. But it's okay, because it was not technically a werewolf, it was a weretiger, which is different apparently. It's all good. We form a deal with Spike and head off to the sunken church to confront the master, because Spike wants Drew back, and even though he never actually does this and we never really see her again, or find out how he got the demon out, or what the demon was even doing in the first place, and how it got exercised. Spike decides that he's cool with us helping him out, even though we didn't help him out, and he just kind of runs off and we don't see him for the rest of the game. But before we can head off to the church, we go to a foundry and beat up 100 demons and talk to Angel, so we can head back to Willow and get some magical MacGuffin that we really never use. And then we go to the Master's magical underground lava palace and head into some bullshit dreamy world, and then we get to the very best part of the game, the trials. And what is the most fun you can do in an early 2000s action beat 'em up? Precision jumping, of course, with very, very little margin for error. And a checkpoint system that makes you do it all over again if you fail. I could go on about this, and in my notes I did. I wrote down almost 2 pages of swears dedicated to just these 3 puzzles. Assassin's Creed might have perfected the formula of making you jump in the opposite direction of what you're trying to do, but Buffy pioneered that way back in 2002. Games of this area were in a transitioning period. They have become narrative-driven experiences, but the checkpoint system and gameplay really hadn't caught up yet, not always at least. And remember NES Hard? Well, the Xbox decided that they would try and do that in a 3D environment. So not only do you have to do precision jump and time your jumps, some of the platforms might also crumble and set you back to the beginning of the stage. Oh! And if you didn't have Hellfire on you, you can't complete the stage because you have to kill Dark Buffy and you need Hellfire to kill Dark Buffy. So have fun reloading, you psychotic fucking idiot. Luckily I came prepared, so I offed and then I did the maze thing and the rapid fire boss encounters, because you know they introduced 11 new bosses, so they had to get rid of them, and they forgot to do that in the first 2 halves of the game, so here we are. And after the big wrestling tournaments with the rapid fire boss encounters, we get to the grand finale and we fight the Master and we kill him. His boss fight is not actually that bad, it feels good, but honestly after having died about 100 times to environment hazards that were way harder than the fight with him, he feels underwhelming, to say the least. But with all said, seeing the Scooby Gang sit at the half-empty bronze with the familiar soundtrack playing, Buffy quipping a one-liner and running off to slay a vampire, I can say this much. It was nice being back in Sunnydale, and even through all the bullshit, I never want to quit the game. There's something about a faithful adaptation of a property that makes you stick with it, despite its many flaws. But it's gonna be at least another 15 years before I revisit this game again. You can bet on it.
And until next time, have fun. It's Halloween.